I believe the purpose of government was to protect inalienable rights that God gave us. Nature can be a pretty rough state, and it's to make sure that we have a civil society, but it should be limited in nature and simply to protect those inalienable rights that we have. The only role that government should have in job creation is to make sure that it maintains a neutral playing field, making sure that we have no corruptions, that the laws are applied fairly, that there is basically a civil society. But it's not up to the government to pick and choose winners. I think that's one of the big problems that we have right now is that when you can't compete with government. And so if the government gets a subsidy, has a technical advantage, it simply is not fair. When I was teaching overseas, I would always teach my students that grew up in a former communist country that as long as they had monopolies, government corruption, and interference by the government, the best governments or the best businesses would not rise to the top, because it's those that know how to cheat the system that win. And so for us to really get the full benefit of a free market economy, we need to make sure that government just stays out of the role of favoring businesses. I think it's important that everybody plays a role in taxation. If you're not taxed, there's no benefit for an individual to request that taxes decrease, and so they become over-reliant. So the number one thing I think that's important is to make sure that everybody has a stake in the game of taxes, so that there's a push to make sure that we reduce taxes. Well, the answer to that question is quite simple. It should play no role in the education of government. That's what we have, a Utah Constitution that specifically talks about education, and I believe that it's primarily a parent's responsibility to give as many options to the parents. So the federal government should play absolutely no role. We should do away with the Department of Education and get government out of the role of education. In fact, I would argue that it's one of the big problems that we've had. You look at this last election, presidential election, it was the 18 to 30-year-olds that overwhelmingly voted for President Obama, that we haven't been teaching the correct principles in education. But that's primarily because the federal government has come in and told us what we can and can't teach. I think the people of the state of Utah know they have certain values, they understand the Constitution, and if we're left alone, we'll provide the best education possible. I think one of the most basic principles of government is that whatever you reward, you get more of. And so as long as we, as a nation, tolerate illegal immigration, whether it be in the employment or other places, we're going to continue to get more of it. And so I think the number one thing that we can do is actually start enforcing our laws. A lot of people say our system is broke. Part of it is broke. I think that we need to do things to make it easier for those that are actually following the law. But the part that's not broke is we actually have quite a few laws on the book to deal with illegal immigration. If we would simply enforce those laws, a large portion of the illegal immigration problem would go away. And so it comes back to whether we actually have the courage to do the difficult choices, because as long as we reward illegal behavior, we're going to continue to get more of it. As many know, this is an issue that's important to me. For me, it's actually a fundamental fairness issue, that if we make sure that we treat people overseas that are trying to come to this country legally, then they won't have the incentive to come to this country. Until we actually enforce, say, hey, if you come here any other way than the legal way, you're not going to get the benefits. We're going to continue to have a problem with illegal immigration. One of the many blessings that we have in this country is we've been blessed with an abundant amount of resources. Unfortunately, we haven't been allowed to access those. You have states like Utah, where 67% of the land is controlled by the federal government. We're kind of at the beck and mercy of the federal government. That's not how it was meant to be. In the state of Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming, we have more oil than in the entire Middle East. In fact, I believe that the only way out of our current economic crisis that we have and the debt crisis that we have is to actually start using our natural resources. I believe there's a very short window for us to be able to do it, but we must get back to the basic principles of being self-sufficient, and energy is one of those. It makes absolutely no sense that we're spending our money overseas to our enemies. That makes it so that we kind of have to get involved around the world. When we have plenty of natural resources here, it's absolutely foolish that we're not bringing in the Keystone Pipeline from Canada, even though it's foreign oil. They're a friendly neighbor, and they're actually confused on why we don't want it. But if you reduce energy costs in this nation, it's like an instant tax cut that doesn't have to be offset. And we're in such a financial mess that I truly believe that it's the only way out of our current problems. I want Utah to be like North Dakota, where they have 2% unemployment and paying $20 at McDonald's. If we just simply have the courage to stand up to and actually tell the truth. I think if most people realized what's coming down the pipeline, if we don't do anything, if we have $4 gasoline again, $5 gasoline, it will have a dramatic effect on this nation and hurt our economy. We'll be right back, actually probably in a depression. And again, as I said, I think it's the only way out of our national debt. Well, I think any country that has a socialistic, is based on a socialistic premise or even a communist premise, it forces people down. American exceptionalism is that you have the opportunity to fail and try, but you also have the opportunity to succeed and get the benefits of that success. I lived considerably, 5 years of my life overseas, primarily in former communist and socialist countries. And I can tell you it's actually depressing for a lot of individuals because it's a permanent class. It makes it very difficult to switch classes. People that are born into the lower class always stay in the lower class. I think part of the American dream is that dream to be able to say, hey, if I work hard, if I put a new idea, if I get a little bit of luck, I can actually change my place. This economic time's been hard for me. I've gone up and I've gone down, but what keeps me going is knowing that I can go back up and fulfill my dreams and start a new business and provide better for my family. But to me, that's the American dream, is the ability to be able to try. So I think you look at what's happened to Western Europe, communist nations, or anywhere where there's a dictatorship, the Middle East and those type of countries, I think it's very difficult to achieve American exceptionalism. Well, you can't achieve American exceptionalism there, but we have the perfect system to reach our full potential. The single biggest problem we're facing right now in this nation is our debt. It's a national security issue. It is actually making us in bondage. It's taking away the future of our children. There's two ways to do it. We need to reduce spending, but unfortunately I think we're long past where just reducing spending is enough. I think the other thing that we have to do, and we have to do it immediately, is to expand our economy. And we can do that through our natural resources. I believe that our natural resources were saved for a time like that they were God-given. If we simply have the courage to develop our oil reserves, our coal reserves, if we can become an energy exporter instead of an energy producer, I think that will greatly reduce the national debt. But it's a problem that we have right now. Ronald Reagan was able to spend the Soviet Union into oblivion. We don't have that luxury right now. if we have some other crisis that occurs around the world, we're already on the brink of being broke. We won't be able to handle it. And so we need to get rid of the national debt. The easiest and simplest way to do that is develop our natural resources. Cheap energy helps our manufacturing sector as well. And so we need to develop our natural resources. Well, you look at the Jefferson's original meeting of separation of church and state. It was actually supposed to protect religion from the federal government. That's the original interpretation. It's not to protect the federal government from religious influences or moral influences or character influences. It was actually to keep the federal government away from interfering with churches. And again, so that's the original definition of separation of church and state. You look at the Founding Fathers, they believed very strongly, John Adams said that our system of government was only for a moral society. It was wholly inadequate for any others. You look at individuals such as Alex de Tocqueville that said, if America ceases to be good, it'll cease to be great. You take away American morality and our system simply does not work. Benjamin Franklin said, as we become less righteous, we have more need of masters. And so the only way for us to make sure that we maintain our freedoms is to make sure that we stay a moral people. Well, there's a big difference between how the General Welfare Clause and the Commerce Clause are interpreted now and how they were originally meant. The General Welfare Clause actually meant if it applies to one, it should apply to everyone. So in other words, there were only supposed to be programs that everyone benefited from, not specific individuals. The Commerce Clause was supposed to be commerce between states, not commerce within a state you look at Wicker versus Filborn, where a farmer that was using wheat was growing wheat simply for his family. I think that was one of the most egregious expansions of the Commerce Clause, because under that definition you can make sure that everything is under purview of the federal government. I believe that we need to get back to the original interpretation of the Commerce Clause and Congress just deal with those things that go in between states, not whether I grow wheat in my garden or tomatoes in my garden.